coming from a South Asian background, there's an expectation that you're a doctor, lawyer, dentist, or some sort of financial expert. So that really hit for me of, I love this space, the connection space, but I thought, I got to go the safe route. I got to fulfill mom and dad's expectations. Maybe it's the imposter syndrome of finance felt like a safer way to go. What? And I literally said to him, I'm like, what if it doesn't work?
Welcome to Engage Presents. I'm Engage co-founder and president Jake Olson. In this interview series, I ask Engage talent the most common questions we hear from event planners to help you get to know them and their stories in 15 minutes or less. Thanks for listening. Welcome to another episode of Engage Presents. I'm Engage President Jake Olson. Alongside me today is Riaz Meghji. Riaz, you are a very fascinating man. You are a speaker and an author, which is really awesome. And you didn't start out that way, though. Investment banking to television host, that's quite the career there. I can see how television hosts might get you into how to speak with human connection, but tell me how the heck does an investment banker get from being in probably an office alone for 12 hours to human connection speaker?
So 22 years ago, I was finishing my finance degree. And look, as a champion of human connection, I'm also a champion of the message of the defining conversations that one we've had of what's the most important conversation you've ever had and what's the most important conversation you've never had.
Mm.
In 2002, I was lucky enough to have the co-chair of a conference I was at, final semester of my finance degree in Vancouver, BC, where I live now, and it was at Simon Fraser University. And this co-chair sat in on some of my sessions. It was a volunteer conference. It was some sessions on an HR track. And he pulled me aside after the conference and he said, so it looks like, you know what? You had a lot of fun up there on that stage. And I said, I did. And he said, I heard you go in the finance route. And I said, I am. And he leaned in that moment. He's like, yeah, I don't think you should do that. And he said, from what I saw on this stage, I believe you've got something to offer in the connection space. Maybe it's on a stage, maybe it's in front of a camera. And then he asked me two important questions. And I think great leaders do this for their people. And he said, are you fulfilling your life vision or someone else's?
Mm.
And I think he knew in that moment, I mean, culturally, coming from a South Asian background, there's an expectation that you're a doctor, lawyer, dentist, or some sort of financial expert. So that really hit for me of, I love this space, the connection space, but I thought, I got to go the safe route. I got to fulfill mom and dad's expectations. Maybe it's the imposter syndrome of finance felt like a safer way to go. What? And I literally said to him, I'm like, what if it doesn't work? And he leaned in this moment, and I credit him for this pivot in transformation of him saying, you're 22 years old. What if you just take a year of your life and see what happens? And he said, when are you going to stop playing safe and start living your life?
Mm.
And I remember I heard those words, and he did what I believe great leaders do for their people. He saw me not only for who I was, but he saw me for who I could be. And I think
Mm.
that is the difference. When you care about your people, when you lean in on these types of moments, that's the difference between calling somebody up and calling somebody out. And I am grateful in that conversation. He called me up and I made a bold decision, entered a bunch of contests to break into the broadcast industry, and was lucky enough to land my first gig on air with MTV Canada out of Vancouver, BC back in 2002.
That's really cool and a great takeaway. So let's kind of talk about that human connection a little bit. You talk about human connection and collaboration, workplaces. But one thing I saw you kind of talk about, and it might be one of your workshops, is how to combat loneliness. And I think just maybe stemmed from COVID. However, I think it was perhaps even started before that. But COVID surely exacerbated the problem. But kind of talk to us about some tips and tricks to combat loneliness and human connection, because I think there's a lot of people who are lonely today.
Yeah, it is a huge problem that I am glad, if there's anything, a silver lining we take out of the pandemic in the past few years, that it was normalized to have these feelings of loneliness and isolation, and now feel more comfortable to open up and speak about it. Like when I am introducing the idea of connection and addressing the challenge of loneliness at work. And one of the things that stood out to me in 2024 was Gallup's State of the Global Workplace report, interviewing, I think it was 128,000 employed respondents over 160 countries. 20% of them said they felt lonely at work.
Mm.
and they were lacking meaningful human connection. And I think the reciprocity of empathetic curiosity is the starting point. It isn't just, hey, it's you checking in on me, Jake, if I feel lonely. It's knowing there's a reciprocity that I can show up, I can be of service, I can be of care to you too. And this is a safe space to talk about what really matters. So one of the things that I champion with teams, with leadership, is a concept, just two simple words: to go first. How can we go first and be the person that admits, I screwed this up? Our goal is to innovate, but I made a mistake. How can we be the person that goes first to admit, what, I'm struggling right now. I need some help, but also have the humility to receive that help when it arrives. And also, how can we be the one to go first, to be the one that opens up a bit of our hearts, a bit of our struggle? I think of onboarding employees from a distance. They could feel alienated if they haven't met people in real life. They want to feel that sense of belonging. If we go first and give people a piece of ourselves with that pure intention, I think it gives a greater opportunity to boost belonging, create connected cultures, build extraordinary relationships. And I get, with multi-generational workforces, there are different nuances to connection. With international companies and different cultural nuances, people may not reciprocate that idea of going first right away. But if we're consistent with our gesture of care and accessibility, I think that's going to help build trust over time and help alleviate these feelings of loneliness, where people can speak up, talk about what they're struggling with, and more importantly, get access to resources that can really help them.
That's powerful. Kind of changing a little gears here. Similarly in the workplace, though, kind of we book for for a lot of sales teams across the country. So when it comes to kind of a sales team, you have this saying, kind of make small talk bigger. Kind of talk about how that can kind of translate to sales and a sales team of making people be able to connect better with their customers.
Yeah, when I think about sales, obviously there are quotas, there are goals, there are bottom lines that they want to reach every single year. And if productivity is our goal, I believe connectivity precedes productivity. So
Mm.
how do we as salespeople use connection to identify unarticulated needs on the other side of our customers, our clients, and our communities? And this idea of making small talk bigger is an invitation to use the power of our curiosity, the power of questions, because I'm a firm believer the quality of our questions, they will determine the depth of our connections. So imagine we're building rapport with a new client, customer, or stakeholder that we have no context with, but we want to build this relationship. One of the things I champion is the simple idea of prompting positive emotion. And I credit the late great Gordon Livingston, psychiatrist, did incredible work on the happiness equation. So imagine a sales team or a sales leader trying to get to know their client. And they're thinking, how do I get this person to open up, to understand what they really value, to understand what they really need?
Mm.
And that the happiest people under Livingston's work had three things in common. They have something to do, they have someone to love, and they have something to look forward to. So the questions that we can ask as sales leaders is, tell me about what you're creating right now that makes you come alive. If we want to understand them on a human level, tell me about the relationships that matter most to you. And some people say to me, well, what if I can't remember all of these prompts and questions? What's the most valuable question I can ask? To me, it's the follow-up question. So Jake, if you're going to tell me about the people in your life, I'm going to then go in and ask, well, what do you love about them the most? And follow your heart. Because I think one of the most valuable questions is just the jump off of, hey, what's on your mind? What's on your heart? And then above all, what are you looking forward to? Like, what are you looking forward to in 2024 and the years beyond? And when they begin to open up about the priorities occupying their mental space, I think we all have an opportunity, by just pausing and following their line of thought, their thought process, what lights them up. And the beautiful thing is, we don't have to memorize a prompt. Their response is the prompt if we're present enough to listen for it.
That is so cool. I love those questions. I love how you just said that and put that together. That is really, really creative and powerful. I can only imagine how beloved you are in these workshops. So just quickly, lastly here, between all the workshops you give, the books you've written and talked about, kind of what's your favorite, workshop or book to talk about, and to what audience?
So it's really interesting, and I have the worst answer for to what audience, because when you talk about human connection, the amazing part about this subject matter is it applies across industries. I've been in front of funeral associations, I've been in front of sales teams, I've been in front of finance and insurance crowds. Um, hospitality, like everything across the board, because at the end of the day, we cannot influence, persuade, or motivate anyone unless we connect with them first. So I think the message transcends industries. But in terms of the most rewarding part of doing this work is the invitation to almost give an excuse or permission to go deeper. And a lot of people say this to me, like I'm a big fan of questions and answers. I'm a bigger fan of questions and reflections. So if I'm doing a keynote with an audience, I love having the whole morning. Well, we'll do a keynote. My goal is to move them, create a shared emotional experience that will move them and earn their trust. And then we take a break and then go into an hour workshop, and they are co-creators of the outcome. I may be giving guiding prompts, but what happens at the table, and look, I was doing an event in DC a couple weeks ago, and an engineer was in the room and he looked at the timer and he's like, so we had an hour. And I was looking at the timer and I realized in the workshop, you're not saying a lot. It's all us doing the work. And everybody started laughing. And I said to this gentleman, I'm like, I love your analytical mind. And I'm like, that's exactly what this is about. Because if I had sat here in the workshop and talked at you for an hour, would you have built the relationships? Would you have had this familiarity if you didn't co-create? And he's like, no. And I think it's a great reminder for organizations that want to create a sense of belonging. They want their people to show up authentically. They want a safe space to break through silos and collaborate more. We can all show up at work and know who you are, yet still ask, well, who are you? And I think in these workshops, in these keynotes, it's empowering people to ask the questions that allow them to find something new in a familiar place. That could be at work, that could be at home, that could be across any industry. But the beautiful part that happens afterwards are the reflections. I don't say a word once these sessions are done, but what people are willing to share and what they do with their teams is so damn moving. It makes this work the greatest compliment and reward to be able to serve in this space.
Well, Riaz, we feel blessed that we're able to help you serve and give you the opportunity to be booked to, funeral conferences or investment groups or insurance groups. We really appreciate the work you do, and we love having you on our platform. So thank you so much for just being willing to share some nuggets of information today. You said so many crazy, great things. I'm sure I could go through this interview again and find like 10 good tweets out of it. And definitely you are a very interesting guy. So we really appreciate you just sharing your time and your personality with us today. If you want to learn more about Riaz, you can, find him online, but letsengage.com, you'll check out his profile and be able to book him there. So thank you again, Riaz, for your time, and stay tuned for more Engage Presents.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks for your partnership.